This is Shruti from Document 360, the co-organizer of this webinar. Thank you for joining this session today. We are just as excited as you are for this session. Our guest today is Selvaraaju Murugesan, who is the head of data science at 𝐭𝐚𝐤𝐲𝐬, a leading enterprise and SaaS company. He received his master's in engineering from La Trobe University, Australia in 2008 and received his PhD degree in computational mathematics from the same. His interests are in the areas of documentation, technical writing, and data analytics. The topic for today is generative AI, what's in it for content creators and content consumers. In the session, Selva will share insights into the functioning of large language models and Gen AI, how they work, their potential applications, tools, and the advantages they offer to individuals and businesses. Thank you. Selva, you can start the presentation now.
Thank you very much, Shruti. So just want to give you an overview about this session. So we'll start off with giving a bit of an intro to generative AI or GenAI, mostly into this large language model and how they actually work. Then we will dive into the session one, where we will focus on how Gen AI is used in content creation bit, which is where most of the technical writers are has a key focus on. And then we will delve into how Gen AI can be used in from the content consumption perspective. Okay, so let's dive in. So if you look at any kind of generative AI, if you want to put it in a simple words, what generative AI is it's auto completion in steroids. Basically, if you take any generative AI capabilities such as ChatGPT or Bard or any other generative AI capabilities out there, what it's trying to do is trying to do auto completion. And the best thing is it can complete a lot of words. Okay, right now it has capability to complete 8,000 words in one go. I've seen generative AI capabilities can go up to 20,000 words in one go. Okay, so you type in a prompt and it can auto complete a lot of text. That is a very high level kind of abstract view of what a generative AI capabilities are. Then you might be wondering, hey, it looks like the chat GPT or Bard seems to think. Actually, they are language model. They are not a mental model of your brain. They do not have any thinking capabilities on their own. So what they're trying to do is trying to autocomplete. Okay, it's in very simple sense. So let's look at how a large language model that underpins this generative AI technology actually work, or how it actually gets built. Okay, so if you look at this sentence, the best thing about technology is the ability to. If somebody gives you this sentence and asks you to predict or say the next word, then you have few choices. For example, most of the people will say connect, and some people will say make, help, and bring. And this is the probability based on the scanning this entire corpus of data in the internet. So there's a lot of this sentence gets built, and then what the large language model is trying to do is the moment you have this kind of words, and it's trying to predict what is the probability that the next word would be, and it can take the higher probability based on your preference. Okay, so let's go with and there is a parameter in the large language model is called temperature, and you can set the value from 0 to 1, 0 being very deterministic, 1 being non-deterministic. So the moment you set the temperature parameter to 0, it will always pick the next word that has the highest probability. Okay, so in this way, in this experiment, if you look at this is ChatGPT Playground, and where I have given the first sentence as the best thing about technology is the ability to, and I set the temperature to 0. Okay, you can actually see it from here, and then it says connect. So it's correct. Whatever highest probability word is connect, it's able to autocomplete. But let's play around with this temperature to 0.8. Okay, here it's going to pick a word that has least probability. So here I say the best thing about technology is the ability to, then now it comes with enhance. This is the new word that's not even in the top 4 probability. Okay, so this is a temperature parameter you can actually control to generate a lot of variations in terms of the text. Okay, right now with this combination, it can give 4 or 5 combinations or variations. And you might be wondering, so this is the underlying technology of large language model, and you might be wondering, where does this probability come from? So it's very simple. So you take any Wikipedia article or any article that you have written, and you try to compute how many times a word, a single alphabet actually occurs. If you are a scramble a player, you already know it by intuitively. So E occurs a lot of times. It's actually 12.49%. And then next is the T, A, O, I, and it goes on. So this is the probability of the English vocabulary in general. Then if you try to generate any kind of sentence using this probability, let's say I assemble a sentence here, which starts with R, R, O, O, and then I trying to match this probability. Basically, E occurs 12.5% of the time. This sentence doesn't make sense. Okay, it doesn't make sense with us. But having said that, if you break it down to into words, some probability, because there's a 4-letter word, there's a 3-letter word, there's a 2-letter word, it has its own probability. And if you're trying to break it up, this sentence, then you'll end up with something. Again, this is not human interpretable. Then you also look at the distribution of words, how many 2-letter words, how many 3-letter words, and you can look at the distribution of word lengths. And again, still, if you apply the same probability, it doesn't make sense. Then instead of going one letter, which I did in the last one, if you look at a pair of letters, okay, this is again a heat map. Now you can actually see from Q, when you put Q, the highest probability of Q after Q is U. Okay, so that's very apparent, and this is called n grams. So here I'm only taking 2 pair of letters, so it's called 2 gram. And if you use the technique to generate sentence, again, it's trying to generate something. For example, vocab, consumer, again, it's improving the moment you add 2 gram probabilities. Okay, then you take 3 grams and 4 grams, okay, and things like that. Now it becomes some way closer to what a human can actually read. Again, it is not cohesive in terms of its narration, but it's able to generate a perfect kind of some kind of a sentence. Okay, and what this large language model is predicting probability. Okay, if you take llama 2, it has about 70 billion probabilities of words, which is quite large. And GPT 100 trillion, GPT 3 about 175 billion. It's all about, the large language model is all about estimating probabilities of what the next word might be. Okay. um, so the way this large language model gets built is, so they take the entire corpus of text data that's available in the internet. These are like unstructured data, but as a very sentences that you have written. For example, if you look at Wikipedia, all the sentences are meticulously written, proper grammar, there's no spelling mistakes, and it has a lot of knowledge in it. Okay, if you give all this data to a large language model, it can self-teach about grammar, sentence structure, and what is the probability of next word it has to produce. Okay, it can also understand the context, some relationship between words. For example, it can know that the queen and the woman are very closely related. It can build relationships. And the moment you give a sentence and you try to autocomplete, it can traverse some kind of a path to autocomplete a sentence. Okay, that's essentially what a large language model would do in abstract sense. But having said that, when the facts change, the LLMs cannot cope. You probably know that the GPT-4 model or the GPT-4 turbo model they recently released now can support all the things that happened since April 2023. Okay, which is pretty good. Last model was April 2022. Now they actually improved. But if you ask the Chat GPT, who is the current prime minister of some country where they actually undergone a change, it cannot cope with change in information. Okay, for that you need to use some kind of a plugin or some kind of a Chat GPT plus that sits on top of this large language model. Then it queries and then plugs in the knowledge gap from the internet or where it actually finds the real-time information from. So um, and most of the time, the way this large language model, you can interact using your user interface. For example, chat gpt, bard, they have their own cohere, they have their own claude, they also have their own ui, where as a consumer you can actually go and type. OpenAI, this is what who pioneered this technology, chat gpt, and they have apis. So if you want to consume these large language models, all these big players like OpenAI, Cohere, Hugging Face, Anthropic, and these other players as well, like Nomic, they expose all their underlying large language model capabilities via APIs, which most of the people actually use in their product. So let's come to the main crux of this session in terms of content creation. So as a technical writer, we create a lot of content. Either it's a technical content or a product knowledge or being a tutorial, we create a lot of content. The way this generative AI is actually going to help us is in terms of increasing our productivity. Okay, we can use generative AI capabilities to draft content, to create outlines and things like that, which essentially leads to a lot of productivity gain. In fact, if you want to do a lot of research and then take notes and things like that, you can use chat gpt or bard and then throw up some prompts at it and can actually generate some content that's useful for you. Okay, so it greatly enhances productivity, and more importantly, it's quicker. Instead of making a lot of reference articles and then going through a lot of um, books and things like that, you can actually ask this generative AI technologies to get the answers quicker. It helps with a lot of preparation in terms of that. And then the other way we can actually think of is it can be a digital companion for your technical writing skill set, and it can help you in terms of all your documentation or content lifecycle, be it from content creation to content management, content organization, peer review, organization, deletion, and archiving. It can help you in this whole plethora. Your entire documentation lifecycle, and it has plethora of tools in its, in its armory. So let's look at the common use cases where most of the technical writers actually use the GenAI capabilities for. Let's say you are a technical writer and you want to start writing about, you have something in your mind and you want to create some outline. That's a perfect use case for a GenAI capabilities. If you have a topic like moon and you want to create some kind of an outline in terms of structuring, instead of you going through that content structuring in the mind, having information architecture in your mind, probably you can actually ask AI to create one for you. And the most important fact is you can actually tweak it. It's not something set in stone. The main capability is it's a chatbot, so you can actually tweak the outline as you go, which is powerful. You're not stick, and more importantly, it can generate a lot of variations in no time, which helps in productivity. The other common use case in terms of paraphrase content, as a technical writer, we have set of vocabulary and our own style of writing. If you want to flex your muscles and then learn new kind of words to articulate things better, probably you can look at Gen AI assistants to paraphrase a lot of your content, and it can do that intelligently, beautifully. And then the common things we have seen in the market, a lot of technical writers want is, hey, I want to change the tone of my uh, article or the content, change the voice, change the speech, or I would rather give a set of articles to Gen AI where it can actually learn the tone of the article in which it's written, and it can translate, it can apply that same tone to the content that somebody else have produced. So in that way, the tone, the voice, and everything can be consistent across. So that is something a generative AI capability is capable of doing. And then the other kind of things which you can actually get it from a lot of plugins and a lot of tools these days: grammar, punctuation, and you can also do some sort of semantic check. And you can also pad up a lot of content or maybe summarize the content quicker as well. So these are typical kind of use cases in the content creation process as a technical writer, which we can actually adopt and use it in our real-time work. If you look at the basic nature of all this 10 or 12 use cases I've actually put together, it's all comes to one simple thing: prompt engineering. If you know prompt engineering, and if you know how to get things done using this Gen AI capabilities, and these things are seamless in terms of executing it. Okay, and then I'll show you a live demo in terms of how Document 360 actually uses. So here I have Document 360 and I have a demo project with me, and this is a piece of content I've written about AI, and all I can do is I can click Eddie, and then Eddie is our generative AI capability, and I can click make longer, and what it actually does is this is again some kind of a prompt engineering that goes under the hood, and it can actually generate it for you. So in terms of expanding this content, okay, let's say I do this, and it generates a text as you go along. And now if I really like it, I can actually click replace, and then there you go. So now you actually added the content. Let's say I talk about okay, let's take another example. I will take some example, and then probably okay, I can choose this content. Now I can change the tone what I want. I want it to be a little bit, looks like a little bit form very professional. Now I want to look at a little bit casual, so it actually takes that content and then converts into the kind of a casual tone. Okay, and then again you can actually see how it actually changing it as we go. Okay, which is the powerful capabilities of this Gen AI. And if you really like it, all you can do is just click replace, and then there you go. So the content is being replaced just like that. Again, this is a very kind of a simple use case where you can actually showcase some kind of a capability. Again, then you might be wondering, there's a lot of tool vendors actually take care of this capabilities and trying to bring into their product, and Document 360 is one of those platforms which you can actually use. And there are a lot of additional capabilities that the product is actually adding in terms of creating an outline, or changing the voice, changing the tone, and things like that. So those are additional capabilities you can actually see from all this tool vendors moving forward. Let me jump back to the PowerPoint. Cool. So that's in kind of a content creation part. Having said that, if you want to customize and write your own prompt, okay, there's a lot of capabilities out there where you can build some kind of a prompt library, which as a technical writer you can actually tune and then give it to your technical writers for actually use in their day-to-day activities as well. So that's also some kind of a niche use case for a technical writer in a product. So if you want to use the Gen AI capabilities, you can use it out of the box in a lot of the products. But if you are really a nerd and you want to have a tweak, and you want to have a hands-on experience with this Gen AI capabilities, look for some kind of a prompt library in any kind of products where, as a technical writer, you can actually fine-tune and tweak those prompts all by yourself, so you can get the output that you want in aligning with your frameworks and methodologies and process that you have in place. All right, so this is that's in terms of the content creation part. Let's move on to the next section where you look at the content consumption. So this is a very exciting field if you look at the way in which the consumers are actually accessing your documentation. So when GPT launched, the way in which actually we consume the information is drastically changing. Okay, right now the consumers are very aware of their time, and they want to accomplish things very quickly. Okay, if you look at a lot of documentation that we produce, either it's a technical documentation or product documentation, what is the end goal of the documentation? So as a customer, I look for some information in terms of configuring something or troubleshooting something or putting things together, and I want to do that quickly. Okay, I do not want to go through a 15-page document or try to find that documentation in some kind of a portal and then trying to go to that section, try to do that. I want to accomplish things quickly with the information that I've discovered. Okay, which is the major shift. And the other thing is documentation. They want it to be accessible anywhere, anytime. Okay, it has to be a digital companion, and more importantly, they want accurate answers. If they go and type anything in your documentation site or any technical documentation that you have, they want accurate answers for all the questions they actually pose. Okay, again, it is revolution by ChatGPT. And this is another major trend which we found very fascinating. There is the customers now have preferences. So it's no longer you're accustomed to writing your documentation for a user persona. Again, the user personas are actually emerging, so they want the content to be consumed in a different kind of a style. Okay, and the form, which is a very kind of a different paradigm to think about. Okay, so let me give you a glimpse of what this content consumption is actually happening. If you look at the audience for your knowledge base, it's essentially these days it's actually human, but from moving on, it will be a more of a Gen AI agents, okay, or any kind of AI bot that's actually consuming. That's a audience for your knowledge base. Again, Gen AI will probably be interface between your documentation and the human. Okay, that's exactly where the things are actually going. And if you look at the old paradigm, the way your documentation is actually discovered is through some kind of a content discovery engine such as Google or Bing. But these days, your content discovery platform is this Gen AI capabilities like ChatGPT and Bard. The way in which you optimize the content is for the old world is all about search engine optimization, but in the new world, it's all about semantic content structuring. Okay. Obviously, most of the people discover your documentation site or the content through search keywords, but these days all through prompts, which is a very different paradigm. And if you look at the next one, the way in which how people are actually using the outcome of the knowledge that they actually discover, it's a very different paradigm. Right now, if I look at any kind of software documentation, if I want to configure something in their product, okay, I go to their documentation site, type some keywords, find out the right article, and then I do the work, because I'm the one who has the account with that product, and then I do the work. In the future, if Gen I can give you instructions or give you kind of an output based on the questions you have, why can't it actually do it by itself? Or minimal human intervention will happen, and only wherever it needs the human input, it will ask us, and then it'll actually do all it on its own. Think about robotic process automation in UX on steroids. Okay, basically, your Gen AI is actually instructing this robotic process automation what to do, where, and when. Okay, with human intervention, with minimal human intervention, that could be a brilliant kind of step. So it puts a lot of emphasis and responsibility on technical writers, because you need to get the content right. More importantly, the way in this Gen AI actually translate that content into a human producible way, that you need to understand and aware of what's going on. Okay, one other thing that happens is through the content consumption is through something called as a RAG framework, which stands for retrieval augmented generation. If you look at all the chatbots in many SaaS product these days, it has RAG under the hood. Okay, what a RAG is trying to do is it's trying to do some kind of a search engine on the top of your large language model. Okay, that's in a very simple abstract view. And the RAG actually works in a different architecture. Before I go into the RAG architecture, there's few concepts that you need to be aware of. One is called tokens. If you go into any kind of large language model, they talk in terms of tokens. So which is a 4 characters. This is a 4 gram, which goes back to my previous slides. And 100 tokens makes about 75 words approximately, and a paragraph would have some around close to 100 tokens. Okay, and the way the RAG model actually works is like this. So you take your entire knowledge base, all the articles as a technical writer you actually put together. You extract only the text, the raw text from that, and then you pre-process a lot of content. For example, if you have images, any kind of disclaimers, header and footer and things like that, you try to pre-process and then take it out. And then next step is the very important process. You split those long articles into 500 tokens. Okay, as I said, 500 token is about, one token is about 400 characters. So you split it into 500 tokens, okay, into smaller chunks basically. And you create something called embeddings. So remember, all these articles are text information. And when you create embeddings, this is a process in which you convert a text into a floating point number, and for which you will use a lot of this open this LLM APIs. Again, I've given you a tech stack a couple of slides ago, and you create embeddings and you store these embeddings in some kind of a vector database. Okay, again, this is all under the hood. And when a user comes and asks a questions in your search box or in your chatbot that you have built, what actually happens is it takes the question, it converts that question into embedding, which is again a numerical form. Then what it actually does is something called a similarity. So it takes your question and it goes to your database where you created embeddings of all your text article chunks, and then only picks up the top 5 that actually has a good similarity. Okay, which is called as a context. It picks up top 5 context. Again, you can actually have more context or less context depending upon what kind of questions being asked. Then you can actually say to this all this LLM API saying, hey, here's the question, here is the context, now answer this question based on this context, and it actually answers the question. Okay, it's a very simple way of articulating this retrieval augmented generation model. Okay, so in this retrieval augmented generation model, as a technical writer, you need to be aware of a few things. The first one is called system message. System message actually sets the behavior of your AI chatbot or your search assistant basically. Okay, and here is some example I've actually given. You can also put a persona for your chatbot or your search assistant. In this case, I put the system message as, hey, you are a customer support representative and you answer the question based on this knowledge base, based on this following rules. Okay, answer it in a professional tone. The answer should be within your knowledge base. It cannot go beyond that. You can set the rules. And I've actually given an example here. Here is Eddie, which is our Document 360 generative AI assistant. And if you ask Eddie, what is your role? It says, I am Eddie, I'm a knowledge base assistant. This is the answer. Okay. Again, what sets this behavior is the system message. System message is the one that determines the behavior of your chatbot or your assistive search. It is never revealed to an end user. Again, it also helps to fight against some kind of a prompt injection attacks, which could be embarrassing if somebody goes to your knowledge base site and ask some kind of a question which is beyond your knowledge base, and it might be a reputational damage to your brand as well. So it helps to fight this prompt injection attacks, which can be a malicious one. And the important thing is you have to tune the system message over a period of time based on the messages that you based on the questions that's been logged. Okay. And the next important concept as a technical writer you need to be aware of is called context. Remember in the RAG model I was talking about this top 5 chunks, it actually picks. And that is very important because the relevant chunks helps with answering that question. More importantly, it actually builds the trust factor. So you have to bring in only the relevant chunks to answer the right kind of question that your user actually put in. Again, if you give more context, it actually produces a better response, but the problem is it takes more time, which is evident. If you go and ask ChatGPT 3 or 3.5 kind of a question that needs a lot of analysis, it takes a lot of time. Just like humans, we take a lot of time when you're actually asked to elaborate on something. It takes long time to think and also long time to say a lot of words. So that's exactly how a large language model actually works. Okay. If you have shorter chunks, it gives a macro context, but longer chunks gives micro context. It's extremely important because if you're asking a lot of how to questions, you need larger chunk size. But if you're asking a lot of questions such as what question or how question, sorry, how many, or some kind of a closed loop question, okay, the micro context is good enough. You can actually answer the question with one or two contexts, so which is very important. The other aspect for a technical writer is this: the prompts. Okay, this is the first time in the history of technical writing where a technical writer actually understands the intent of the ask. Okay, because in most of the time you get search keywords at the maximum, and you have to figure out as a technical writer what is the intent of this query. Okay, either they want any explanatory information or tutorial information, or they are specific about a particular issue in the product or things based on the search keyword. It's very hard. But if somebody types in the prompt, they will actually, as a technical writer, they actually know what they actually want. Okay, it's extremely important, and based on that you can actually produce a lot of accurate answers, and which leads to this AI search analytics. Okay, if you can capture that question and then somehow stored in analytics part, now as a technical writer you can actually understand the user intent better, and more importantly, what are you going to do with that kind of the question that's been asked. It actually helps you to address any existing knowledge gaps. Because remember, as a system message, you can actually say, if somebody asks any questions that is where the context is not returned or it is not relevant, obviously your AI, generative AI chatbot or assistive search will say, I do not know. Okay, that questions can be logged, and more importantly, that helps you to identify the existing knowledge gaps. This actually helps you to drive customer satisfaction and self-service rate. Here's the other important thing. The moment somebody puts in a question, as a technical writer, you can actually categorize them on what kind of question is being asked and why are those questions being asked. And you can actually classify those questions, okay, based on, is it procedural question? Is there a lot of how to question is being asked? Or is it being a lot of tutorial question is being asked in terms of understanding some concepts? You can actually know and you can actually write a lot of content based on those kind of questions. And the other critical aspect is, if you find that there's a lot of questions being answered using some kind of a chunks or some kind of an article, maybe that article is very crucial for your knowledge base. Okay, you can actually identify whether that content is up to date, or whether that content needs a lot of accuracy. You can improve that, and you can actually prioritize as a technical writer which content to focus on. That's extremely crucial. I'll give you a quick demo in terms of that. So this is a document 360 documentation portal, and we have our own generative AI capabilities called Ask Eddie. So now I go to Ask Eddie and then I say, who are you? And then it says, I am Eddie, I'm a knowledge base assistant. Sure. And then now I ask, what is document 360? Again, this is a very what question. So now I'm trying to understand what is document 360, and then it goes to all your articles that you have produced, and then now it actually tells you, it's a platform that allows project members to create and curate self-service public or private knowledge base. Very crisp answer. Okay, and more importantly, if you look at the reference article, this is the chunks I was talking about, and is able to produce this content based on this 5 articles. Okay, you can actually see document getting started is one of those chunks. Okay, the moment it gives you that 5 reference article, what we're trying to do is build in trust with that GenAI capability. Okay, and now let's look at some of the questions. Let's say if I ask how to set review reminders an article. Okay, um, here I can go into an article and then look at um, some kind of a section where I can actually go and do this, but you can actually see it actually gives me 5 steps, so I don't need to go and then read this article. Obviously, the most of the content coming from this review reminders article, that's where the all the steps are being detailed. But as a consumer, I want to get the accurate information right there. Okay, it's a very different way. Then you can actually ask how many characters are okay. I'll just ask how many AI features are in document 360. Right now it says there are 2 AI features in document 360. Cool. So again, I'm in the old kind of a version. If I switch to the more one, we have about 8 features now. So again, now this is actually giving you a very specific answer, right? Instead of me scrolling through and then counting it, now it actually asks. Okay, that's a amazing thing about this. And you can actually go on and then say, how do I integrate document 360 with Salesforce? Again, this is a very a long procedural thing where it has to give a lot of steps. That article is very lengthy, but again, it's able to find out and then give me all the procedural steps in terms of going through that. Okay, which is pretty cool. Again, Salesforce comes on the top as well. Again, all this thumbs up, thumbs down, and then copying of that gets logged into your any kind of platform that you use. In Documents, you also log that and give it as an analytics. Which is very important for a customer experience, and more importantly for technical writers to improve the content. Okay, one of the main use cases you can actually think of is if there's a lot of support tickets that's coming in, and if you somehow correlate that support question to the kind of questions that gives you no results, okay, then you can actually quickly create content to address that support ticket very quickly. So that's one of the nifty things as a technical writer you can actually do. Let me ask some questions. Let me ask some question which is not in this knowledge base. I'll just say, who is the president of sorry, who is the prime minister Australia? Okay, now again, this is not, this is out of the context. Now it says no result found. Okay, but again, I can also go and ask any kind of questions where it's beyond the scope of document 360, and it should be able to say no results found, and this gets logged in the analytics, which you can actually use to produce content. All right,
Thank you,
thank you so
Selva,
much.
for sharing. Yeah, for sharing your insights on an upcoming and very relevant topic today and answering our queries. On behalf of entire Document 360, I thank everyone who joined the session and hope it was a great session for you all. The entire session is recorded and will be uploaded to our website soon in case you want to come back and see it along with the presentation deck. Thank you. We'll be back again with yet another session next year. Goodbye.